So again, in regards to the flat Earth, the conspiracy of the globe, space, the universe that I spoke about, I did a couple videos on it because it's pretty clear that the world is perpetually leveled and motionless. To think that that is an absurd belief is just pointing to the fact that you're brainwashed. Because right now, if we just sit here, the world is not moving, and if we get into a car, plane, train, boat, will always be leveled. So there's your evidence right there. That's where you start. You don't start from state-sponsored education and media. Now, of course, we start from there initially because you're trained to. You're subconsciously programmed. This goes into that law of attraction where they talk about your subconscious mind because you think that you've seen this globe, but you haven't. Even the recent SpaceX fake X launch, what they do is they have them, board the rocket or whatever in one shot. But then really what they're doing is they're going in some type of, fake cockpit. And then they have the side screen where there's a CGI and there's actually like a fake a rocket that supposedly is in space. But all they're doing is turning, the flat plane of Earth 90 degrees upwards to make it look like it's the side of the globe, and then they use a fisheye lens to curve it. But if you really look at the video, you'll see on one of the shots it wasn't curved, so they fucked up and it was flat, but it was still like on the side. So a lot of people a lot of people bought it just because, again, who's doing it is the authorities, so looks right, must be right. So you're gonna have to doubt them. And that's what I'm saying about a lot of these the atheists, materialists. They refuse to even doubt it. When presented with the information, they won't even challenge it. They just take it at face value because of who said it. That's what I mean by saying their status. They're probably not outright, but by not even challenging the official paradigm and just blindly believing in it because of your blind trust in the authorities, it's like taking the authority as truth rather than the truth as authority. Then that just shows a lot about how you perceive things. Because truly, on a certain level, this, is actually the biggest conspiracy on the mundane level, is how they convince people that, they live on a spinning ball in a vacuum. That's actually the most, prevailing conspiracy, and it's most easiest to debunk if you're really honest with yourself. Now, people say why. Ultimately, what it looks like they're trying to do, and what's in a lot of their plans, and even the Greer guy came out and stated this, to Stephen Greer. They're trying to fake an alien invasion. That's why they're putting out these UFO videos, a declassified UFO. But really, it's just, top secret, black budget military projects, and that's probably where a lot of the NASA budget is going, into these high tech fighter craft, which they're going to use along with space or alien suits or whatever, look like alien beings or whatever. They're going to use that to attack the world and blame it on aliens and say we're being invaded by a foreign civilization. That's why they're coming out with all these fake news stories on the, especially with the science rags, about, well, the civilizations. There could be thousands of civilizations in the Milky Way. We never know. Oh God, there's like hundreds of Earths, and they're preparing you slowly, for the acceptance of aliens, which a lot of smart people, even me, I fell for it. I'll admit it. I just didn't know. I had doubts though, which is why I probably was so attracted to the flat Earth truth once I, made sense of it. Because I always had slight doubts, but I didn't let those doubts stop me from accepting this globe bullshit. So I fell for it also. We all can be fooled, in some form or fashion. But the whole point again was to convince you that other worlds exist, other civilizations exist, and guess what? War. Because that's all this plane really is. I mean, this is a violent plane. And men are violent, women are violent, animals are violent, insects are violent, fish are violent, birds are violent. Everything is war. So it's like this one guy says they invented space and the universe, and guess what? You can't have space without war. So that's what's coming. You better believe it. They're going to fake an alien invasion. And of course, most people are going to believe it because it's really going to be an attack. This is going to be a false flag, but, they're going to attack cities and places, and people are going to die and things are going to get destroyed. They're going to say it's the aliens. Then the Pope is supposed to come out and negotiate, and that's how they're going to establish this one world government under the Pope and the technocrats, basically. And that's their, not final vision, but this is their wet dream. And they're pretty close to doing it. Like I said, I think the NASA budget All that money that people talk about, where those billions go? Because it sure as hell doesn't go into fucking production. Because that fake X launch was so 80s style. They didn't even try to make it look updated as far as how they're showing the so-called globe. It looks so fake and so manipulated to anyone who's looking. And there's even a clips of a mouse. There was a mouse on the thruster or whatever the fuck, uh, where the fire shoots out the back of the rocket. And there was a mouse on there, so obviously even that fake, or maybe it was a real rocket, but it wasn't in space. It was stable, and they had a CGI screen. There was a mouse on the fucker, so there's no space. There's no vacuum of space. You can't live in a vacuum any more than you can't live in a place with no air. You can't live in a vacuum, and you can't say we're on Earth. We're not in the vacuum. Well, Earth would be in a vacuum, wouldn't it? I'm sure this vacuum could not be resisted by a gaseous atmosphere on a tiny pebble, which really wouldn't even be a pebble if the space is so-called infinite. It would be less than a pebble. It would be nothing. You're telling me this infinite vacuum is having a hard time sucking the atmosphere off of a nothing? So it's all fiction. And of course, like I said, all that money and everything, they're going into this black budget. So everybody's talking about these Mars missions and Majestic 12, but really all that is these fake, these alien craft that they're building. And I'm sure they have probably thousands and hundreds of thousands of them underground that they're going to use to fake the alien invasion. Sounds crazy, but just wait. Because that's why they would have all these official releases of declassified UFO footage. They're prepping the minds of people. These people, man, they think, again, intergenerationally, and they think big. So that answers a lot of people's why. Because a lot of people say, why would they fake it? Well, the long-term goal is to create the threat from another world. So that means the whole world is threatened by another world. So the whole world needs to unite. It's a power grab, just like this fake coronavirus thing is threatening the whole world. They always use that fear and give you or offer you the so-called safety, which is merely a restriction of rights. So again, you'll notice that things like this, these social, political, economic events, or what I've noticed is that even a lot of the truthers in a lot of cases, they happen to be Christians. A lot of these patriots, and they get called right-wing conspiracy theorists or conspiracy nuts. But again, you'll notice a lot of them are Christians and Jesus, and yet and still they also have an urge to know the truth in a certain sense of what's going on in the world. Um, and I think that's due to them having some type of transcendent principle to adhere to, even though we would say it's not what they think it is, or it's not as real. But like I said, even the atheists would say that also, but they adhere to another false principle, which is, again, the Big Bang evolution, which is state sponsored propaganda, which is really from the Vatican, the Jesuits. It's an intergenerational psyop to convince the whole world of an untruth. But these people adhere to it because it's state sponsored by education, the experts, authorities. So, again, their transcendent principle, without them knowing it, is basically, in a sense, it's the Big Bang and its evolution. That's what they adhere to and believe in. But again, that's a theory. Big Bang evolution is also a theory. And even Darwin, in a letter he wrote near the end of his life, he doubted his own theory. He said, I can't necessarily prove this. But you'll see these people espousing this as a fact. They'll espouse Big Bang and evolution as a fact, an unquestionable fact, because again of who told them and when they were told. They were inculcated as children. So never look back on history or whatever and be so amazed or appalled at what people believe, because as you can see, it's like Adam Weishaupt said, foolish man, what can you not be made to believe? I mean, we all are wired, I guess, in some sense, to reach out to some type of, some type of, again, transcendent metaphysical principle to stabilize our psychology in a sense. It's like you're wired for the religion in quotes, because it's almost like, there's something deep down that knows there's something more to this, but again, we can't put our finger on it. And a lot of us, you're not supposed to, naturally. The natural course is ignorant, violent and selfish. But it's as they said, it's the virtue in us that calls for something deeper and more transcendent than our egoic, bestial type existence, which is all this is. Because, the fundamental evil would be the ego in of itself, the flesh body and the mind that goes along with it in its course. That's really your fundamental evil. And of course, all of these evils stem from that, to where you get situations like we have now. because you'll see in a lot of times when people complain about socioeconomic issues, the economy, etc. But what they never admit to is the fact that the main reason we have any problems is because of the body, because the nature of the body. You can't fail to see that, or if you do fail to see that, then you're confused. It's not about being negative or being a pessimist or being optimistic even. It's the facts that the proximate cause of your suffering is your body. It's its nature. It's deficient. I always say this over and over. Like they say, a lie repeated, becomes the truth. Well, you got to repeat these things so they can get deep inside your understanding, because you'll notice even times like these that people, they're confused. Once you understand the main proximate cause, then it's easier to deal with or put these auxiliary issues into their proper perspective. You can have a more sober approach, not be so fanatical about it. But of course, like I said, while you're still here, you have a body and mind, so you can, you try to mitigate, you try to do things, and you can speak out. But again, it's not the primary problem. The primary problem is the nature of our existence. It's just a selfish existence. It's a self-willed, selfish, contradictory, self-deceiving, and ignorant existence at its fundamental level. And of course, this natural system is so plagued with violence that it becomes a horror a lot of times. And so again, people need to reach out, or we feel the need to reach out for some type of transcendent principle and meaning. Usually that'll be what we're either taught or the people we're close to, or whatever your condition, to whatever veil you're given to view it as, until you cease to experience this hellish zoo. Now, of course, if you were to break everything down to brass tacks, you would be left with mainly what we call nature, which is a very broad term. And again, this stuff goes back to what you call the ancient Hyperborean wisdom. This not self and self, because when you get down to it, we're dealing with matter and mind, and we have this environment. We call it nature, which is a very broad term, but really you're dealing with indifferent matter, which is not you. You're claiming it as you, but technically it's not. Even the ego, the personality, is not the body, but even initially it feels like I'm the body as one unified whole, but that's not even true. The personality is not the body. This is why your personality, your consciousness, has a lot of ideals that just can't be and won't be realized with the life of the body, because they're not even one and the same. And that alone is sort of a type of torture, to have all these personalities and imagination and goals, but the body being so limited, you have to accommodate all your ideals and visions with the life of the body, and it just comes up short. Every time you solve a problem, there's a new one. So when you get down to it, what you call nature is indifferent to what you call you. And in such a harsh environment, again, you're going to need some type of transcendent principles, at least for the psychology. A lot of times it's like when we're young, it's better when you're just moving around and active all the time. But then, you get older or middle age or whatever, you start to become more sedentary in a lot of senses, or you just become more aware that your condition is very distressful and trying. It's just that, everybody says life is hard. But nobody wants to say why it's hard. It's fundamentally hard because of the nature of the body being unsatisfactory. It's because life in of itself is not life, it's death. Life wouldn't even be hard. True life would just be self-existent and ongoing. It wouldn't have deficiency, hunger, death, and the need to reproduce. It has to be reproduce these bodies because they keep dying. They're called the death bringer. So what you have with animal passion is really just this blind force that, in quotes, fucks us, in a sense. Like the farmer would, in quotes, fuck his animals so he can breed his animals down into his, his farm, his livestock. We're the same. We're being fucked down here, bred into this condition, just like other beasts. And, as the body and the mind, it's going to get slaughtered. So we're not much higher than ants, worms, cows, uh, any other beast, lions, whatever. We you can't defeat a lion physically, but you're not, as a human, you're not more spiritually significant than a lion. That's where a lot of the confusion comes in. Because I had one guy tell me, "Oh, this is a demonic philosophy. You say that we're animals." Well, no, this is the animal realm. What they were trying to say was there's a principle in the human, at the human level, that can see through it, that can differentiate to a level where it can realize a certain immaterial essence that is more spiritual and higher than the earth. But as far as a living, breathing, eating, shitting, fucking, toiling, fighting, dying human, you're no higher than a fucking dog. That's the harsh reality of it. And these type of insights will lead you to what's called nihilism. And a lot of people are all put by nihilism, which basically means that everything is meaningless. Ultimately, another way of putting it is that it's an illusion. It's not real. It's always in flux. Once you have communication or contact or some familiarity with the real, then you'll be able to more clearly see why this is called the illusion, and that is called the real. Now, that would be, like I said, it's death, but that's just the word, and a lot of people get different, mental images with the word death, which don't correlate with the actual state that's being trying to be conveyed through language. So, a skull is not a symbol of death. Death is merely the internal unconscious potency. It's the void. But it's not this abyssal, dark, and depressing like some of these some poets and writers who talk about the void. All we have is out of the void and back into the void, and that's all darkness. But no, I mean the void is actually a potent, and even ironically, it's enlivening. Because even with the Big Bang theory, which says that something came from nothing, which technically something can come from the empirical nothing, but it's not an absolute nothing. The void is not nothing. It's not in this abyss of nothing. It's actually a very potent, yet immaterial and indescribable force, you could say, that's truly ever existent. And all the things, of the world, all the matter, and all these ever shifting creatures and states, they would be relatively illusory. But it's easier to see that, the illusory nature of this if you root yourself more so in the eternal unconsciousness. You can come to do this intellectually, and even in meditation as you go deeper and deeper into your even your contemplations. Even you want to root yourself in the eternal unconsciousness. It's as it said, for an infinite of time, there was nothing, and then all of a sudden there's this body self. But as long as you can remain ignorant of the body self, you will be like you were before you were born. And that's the goal of all of the spiritual wisdom and esoteric teachings. It's about the reappreciation, even the cultivation of the unborn state, and even the preservation of that state by devaluing this blind craving to reproduce the ego or to make more people for your own sake. This is what is entailed in some of the the highest wisdom, going all the way back to Hermes. In the Greek you have the Hermes, and the Egyptian is Tahuti. But even before that, like I said, it's called the Hyperborean wisdom. So these teachings are very old, and ultimately it leads to the wisdom that, again, the only God, if you want to say God in its most divine sense, would be what you call death. That is really the rock that one is supposed to lean on, because that's what you are at bottom. Is your the eternal unconscious, being parasited by a body mind at bottom. But then again, this you would not be individual. So it's a little counterintuitive. But, as they say, that what makes things is not a thing. So ultimately, you would be not a thing, but ultimately the mind would be a thing. So you're not even the mind. So in truth, the actual transcendent principle, the universal and real, in a sense, transcendent principle is the void. That's the real rock that everyone's really looking for. You can't, Jesus is not coming back. The Big Bang, evolution, transhumanism is not going to save anybody. State-sponsored science and education won't necessarily save anybody. You know, Passing these amazing laws won't necessarily save anybody. I don't know what saving anybody really even fucking means. If you really look into this, well, we need to be saved by how? What? Birth leads to death. Are you trying to escape death? You're already in death. This is why this is called death for the living dead. It's too late for that. So you're trying to be saved from here? Well, okay. You just got to know your transcendent principle that you're really searching for would be the void, the all potent, all powerful source, the origin, what you call the void. It's an empirical nothing, to the bistro senses and awareness, but it's not an absolute nothing. It's really every non-thing. It's not everything even. It's beyond things. So you got to keep that in mind when discussing, the void and the even death itself, because a lot of times the words can misconstrue the actual meaning. You got to try to say what you mean and not mean what you say. Peace.